back over my eyes. Hide and seek and leave me be. Yell my name across your open line. Breathing on me through the breeze.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Family Movie Night, your go-to podcast for fun movie talking times. My name is Austin.
My name is Quinn.
And my name is Autumn.
What's up?
Not too much, you?
Not too much. So today we're going to be talking about Mid90s a little later on in the podcast, but for now, let's just have a chat about what's going on in the world of movies and entertainment and us and yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like a fun time.
Yeah.
All right,
Cool.
First question. What do you guys think of Wes Anderson?
Of Wes Anderson.
Wes Anderson? Fucking really like Wes Anderson. But I think my favorite Wes Anderson is honestly Grand Budapest Hotel, I guess. But I know you don't really like, what's the one you don't like?
World
I don't like Moonrise Kingdom
Moonrise
very
Kingdom,
much.
that's the one. Yeah.
why?
Because you really
Yeah.
like it, right?
Yeah, I'm a
yeah,
big
it's like
fan.
your favorite.
It's
yeah.
pretty universally loved. I don't know why I don't like it.
Cool.
That's my answer. Is it's great. I just kind of just didn't do it for me. I love all of his other stuff. But yeah,
I really like Isle of Dogs.
all of that is
lot.
great. I love stop motion is such a good medium for him.
It is.
I always think about when I'm watching his stop motion movies, how stop motion in itself is so time consuming, but imagine trying to his timing and his sense of humor is so unique and special. So imagine trying to line up that sort of weird, quirky timing with stop motion. It's so hard.
It's so specific. I don't know how he does it.
It's so weird.
It's so well done.
Yeah.
It's a lot of time.
I wonder if his stop motion movies take longer than say your average one Wallace and Gromit. Considerably
Oh, I
longer.
used to love Wallace and Gromit.
Right? The
When I think
classic.
of Wallace and Gromit, I think of the moon, the little cheese moon. Was that
Oh,
a thing?
yeah.
Oh
Was
yeah,
that a thing?
yeah. They
Yeah.
go to
I
they
always
go to
think
the
of
moon
that.
and it's cheese.
Yeah.
Forget what kind of cheese it is.
Oh, I love.
Probably
Cheddar. Or
Gouda.
Let's do a Wallace and Gromit episode.
Curse of the Were Rabbit.
That's a vibe.
Loved
is a
it.
vibe.
Yeah.
Did you guys see any movies this week?
I saw Mid90s.
Twice.
Yeah, that's about
your
it.
whole life?
Just watched it twice.
I saw a really cool film, Ingrid Goes West.
Ingrid?
Yeah.
What's it about?
So it's basically it's on Netflix, and it's about this woman who basically, her mom passes away, and she kind of, I don't want to give anything away. I think the Netflix definition of it says she's a stalker, so I'll say that. She's kind of a stalker, and she goes west, and she leeches on to this Instagram influencer played by
Caitlin Olsen.
Oh.
And it's super interesting.
That's cool.
It was really cool.
The context of this movie changes depending on where she was living before she went west. Because she lived in LA, is it an underwater movie?
Yeah, underwater movie. It's kind of like Aquaman.
Oh, that's so
in
cool.
that sense, yeah.
Yeah.
So-
We were speaking before the podcast about how Jason Momoa is everyone's type. Do you agree or disagree?
I guess I agree now. I know I said I disagree because I was not really my type, but I get it. I get that what you're saying, that he's just such a nice, attractive person, so I totally get that.
He's beautiful in somehow both a very masculine way and a very feminine way, because he's just he's physically beautiful and kind of soft features and long hair, but he's also so buff, and he's very kind, but he's also very strong, He's got everything.
I wish I had a Dothraki soldier to be with me all the time.
I don't know what that means. I've never watched Game of Thrones.
One of those.
It's weird that we live in a world where Aquaman is one of the sexiest superheroes.
Is that really the thing? In my head, it's Chris Evans or something.
Well, not the, but
Oh, okay. I thought you were you were saying he's the it man.
No, I think Chris Hemsworth is the sexiest.
Oh, true. No, yeah.
Superhero.
We should have a podcast about that.
I feel like we've potentially crossed into an alternate timeline. I feel like Aquaman was made fun of so much, and then suddenly he's the guy.
Yeah, Ant-Man too. Ant-Man's
Oh, dude.
Yeah.
Paul Rudd.
Oh,
Sign me up.
love
Do you
Paul
really want to
Rudd.
do a podcast where we rank the Marvel Cinematic
No,
Universe
that's
by hottest?
so
By
messed up. How messed up would that be? Can you imagine a group of men ranking the hottest woman superheroes? How
That would be
offensive that
fun.
is.
We should do Michael Douglas as number one, personally.
That's true. De-aged Michael Douglas.
Number 2, I do Thanos. To be honest,
Oh,
love that purple guy.
I've been hearing a lot of talk about an Ant-Man Thanos porno.
Where have you been hearing talk?
I can't disclose that.
Just the net,
Yeah.
the web.
subreddit.
Speaking of superheroes, what do you guys think about it Collider released that Robert Pattinson is in talks as the next Batman.
Dude,
Batman.
And Matt Reeves, the Batman.
I'm so happy.
Ooh, yeah, you didn't do it?
Have you seen Good Time?
I haven't, but you talk about it a
Okay,
lot.
yeah. Anyone who hasn't seen Good Time, go see it. It's so good.
Yeah, I hear it's amazing.
Yeah.
I fully support Robert Pattinson as Batman, primarily because it's so kind of out of left field. And here's the thing is like Batman as a character, the whole thing is like Bruce Wayne is not actually himself when he's Bruce Wayne. He's himself when he's Batman. So the Bruce Wayne character should be sort of like kind of like rough around the like edges and sort of not his full self. And when you put on the suit, that's when you like I've never seen Robert Pattinson dressed as Batman, so I don't know how he's going to be with the suit on. But without the suit on, I can see him playing Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
Like a young like kind of like scruffy like fuck, I don't like myself. I'm Bruce Wayne, you know.
He's got the jaw for it.
The
Like,
jaw.
He does. Like if you put him in a cowl, it's like he has a giant big Batman
well, it's cool
jaw.
because you said it was going to be like a noir film too,
Yeah, I
right?
think-
Kind of, so I can just see it. I don't know.
I think it'll be a really interesting like flawed Batman, like a psychologically like distressed.
Yeah.
I can see him just like bringing a very interesting like broken hero to it, and I'm very interested. He's going up against Penguin and Catwoman.
Oh, dope.
Yeah, so we're getting them.
That's cool because we didn't really get Catwoman from Anne Hathaway. We like did, but not like the Catwoman we know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Penguin is somebody that I've been waiting for like a serious take on. Danny DeVito killed it.
Yeah.
But like it was
haven't seen
kind of
that.
comical in a way.
It was Burtney.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I wonder what they'll do if they'll do just like mob boss. I think that would be really cool if like for at least the first one out of the gate, it's not really like there's no kind of supernatural element to it. Because are we good?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay. You just look suspiciously at the. Anyway, if there's no supernatural element to it, because like if you just have like a guy in a cape going up against like a mob boss and then like a girl who's like a burglar in there somewhere.
Yeah.
I just think it's a really cool to no supernatural elements, which kind of like is back to like the Nolan stuff. I guess all Batman, but like just more grounded.
I feel like that's the right move because Marvel is so not grounded. And when they made the Justice League movies, they did the same thing. It was very not grounded. But that's probably part of the reason why it didn't work, because people are used to DC because of Nolan being very like real, you know? So then when they go see Batman and he's fighting like evil monsters from space, they're sort of like, I don't know, this isn't the Batman I wanted, because they're used to the Batman that Nolan gave us, you know?
That's a good point.
Yeah, I'm wondering if in the casting process they like take everyone's headshots and just cover their eyes and look at their jaw. They're like, oh, that's
I think that's probably what they do.
I'm sure it happens.
I think that's all it
I'm
is.
sure it happens.
Yeah. They're like, oh, that's the right jaw for the role.
What do you think we should call him? Because we had Batfleck.
Robert
Right.
Pattinson.
Battinson. I've heard Battinson.
Obviously.
I've heard
Poor Batflick. Sad
yeah.
Batflick.
I think that people
I
didn't
like Arbats is my favorite.
I like Arbats.
Because people call them Arpats.
It's like R. Kelly, but
for
Arbats.
Twilight. Yeah, maybe.
Oh, I definitely love R. Kelly, too. I'm a huge R. Kelly
I'm cutting
fan.
this out of the podcast.
No, he's just my friend. He
No.
invited me over.
No, don't talk about it. I feel
Don't
like,
talk. Yeah, shut the fuck up.
I feel like I feel like people weren't super stoked on like middle-aged 50-year-old Batman, because as much as it really aligned with the comics to have like an older Batman played by Ben Affleck, who is like sort of like, oh, I hate this job, but I still do it. I feel like people want Batman to be like a young leading man, you know?
I've heard. I mean, I think there's two camps. I think that there are people who want like old Batman.
Yeah.
Because there was like this promise of old Batman with Ben Affleck, and we didn't really get it. At least I didn't feel like satisfied with what we saw from like an older Bruce Wayne and an older Batman. And you get it kind of in Dark Knight Rises, but like, you know, like not really. And there was like this like thing that there's like a lot that could be tapped into with Batman, and it hasn't been.
I guess when I say people, I meant like the average viewer, because I agree that the fans would
Yes,
want that
yeah.
because it's so in line with some of the best Batman stories that are available, you know? So just
I'm in for a young Batman though, like, cause
like Gotham,
yeah, like 12-year-old Batman, Batboy.
Okay,
Baby boy.
baby.
Or no, super
Strong
baby.
baby.
Strong baby.
Strong baby. Damn it.
Super baby.
Baby boy. Tiny boy. Baby boy, I need you.
I would really like to see like a really good Robin, You know, we got
That'd
a
be
promise
super
of like an okay
Who
Robin.
would be a good Robin? Okay, I gotta stop this conversation. But who would be a good Robin?
Tom Holland.
Timothy Chalamet.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah. Timothy Chalamet.
Mr. Casting agent over here.
Sign me up.
Ooh.
But is he? I don't know how old.
Would he
that
do
dude
it?
is. No, but maybe
Why?
if Art Bats is.
Yeah. Call me by your
Our
name
best.
to Robin. Is that a glow up or a glow down?
I feel like I don't know. Depends on the way you look at it.
Depends on how Matt Reeves does it.
I would love to see. I would love to see if they can make this Batman movie fit into the same universe as the upcoming Joker movie.
I wonder if they will.
Ooh.
That would be interesting because, like, just from the trailers of that movie, I'm hyped as heck, and it also seems like really based in reality. They're like rebooting it, and it seems like noirish as well. Like, and if they're going for that with this,
That would
maybe
be
that's
so dope.
maybe if the Joker movie goes well, they'll be like, oh, it's in the same universe. And if it goes poorly, they'll be like totally different. You
Like
know?
Venom?
Yeah, like Venom.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's super interesting. I'm definitely excited.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Mm-hmm.
Only time will tell.
Only time will tell.
Only
Yes.
time.
Do you see any movies? What are your movie adventures, Quinn?
Oh, I said Anger Grows West.
Yes, you said.
And I haven't watched any movies, but I've been watching Fleabag on HBO, or I guess Crave, but it's an HBO series, and it's so good. It's what's her name? Phoebe
Waller-Bridge.
I think she like writes some of it.
Mm-hmm.
I think she directs some of it. I could be very wrong, but it's really good. Fleabag is really fucking good. And I've also been watching Broad City, so 2 female-led kind of comedy shows slash
Yeah.
or I guess Fleabag is like a dark comedy, I would say. Super good. Super cool.
I'm really excited for Midsummer. Yeah, we spoke about this a little bit before the podcast. I just think that Ari Aster, just as a director, is so technically talented that even if the story isn't like fantastic or like Hereditary level, that it's just gonna be an impressive as hell movie. My like weary prediction is it'll be like what Us was to Get Out. That's my weary prediction. But my positive prediction is that because it's such a gamble, that it'll overtake it. And I like Will Poulter. He
Did
said it
you
was
start
better.
to think that because you watched the full trailer? Because I've only watched the teaser.
I
didn't watch the full trailer.
I didn't start to think it because I watched the full trailer.
Okay.
I had that in my mind from the get-go for a couple reasons. The first being Hereditary, when it was marketed as like scary, jump scares, terrifying. Midsummer was like the marketing, the first trailer that you guys have seen, so then I'll talk about. It's not like that. It's very much like kind of weird and like off kilter, but it's not like scary. You know what I mean? You watch the trailer, the only thing that I would consider scary is that shot of the creepy face.
Yeah.
And like some of the sound design and stuff, but the actual like movie, the trailer isn't like, it looks like it's going for something very different, which is what Us did. After Get Out, he got rid of this whole like really grounded sort of suspense thing and went like full horror. And so not full horror, but you know what I mean? It was
Yeah.
like less based in reality.
More like
even
slasher, more
Yeah.
genre.
Exactly. And so I'm feeling like it will be a genre shift, and so that will be divisive. However, that's what I mean. I don't mean that quality wise it might be worse. I just mean it could be a very different
Do you think
experience.
that's like... Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Just, do you think that's hard for like most kind of directors that like, okay, they release like a big, awesome movie that everyone loves, and then do you think the second one, like, I know that Us was a different movie, but yeah, it was a different movie. I shouldn't say it was worse or better than Get Out, but in my opinion, like, it was not as good as Get Out. But do you think it's just because like we all have this like idea and expectation, and we're kind of, you know what I mean? Like, just because we all like...
It plays
like
a
the
role.
First, yeah, you know?
I can kind of relate to this a little bit through an album that you guys will get this. It's like a Kendrick Lamar album. So he released To Pimp a Butterfly, and it was like considered like one of the all-time classic albums. They're like, this album's perfect, like 10 out of 10 across the board. And they're like, what is he going to release next? And so he realized that there was so much pressure on him to release something just as good. So he purposely made something that wasn't to the level, because he released the album Damn, which is really good, but it's so different. He wasn't trying to make big political statements. He wasn't trying to make like a transcendent album. It's just like a good hip hop album. He did it on purpose so that people would be like, oh, okay, like he took what people expected of him and like diverted it so that it wasn't a problem. I feel like a lot of directors, because a movie is just such a huge experience and you don't have full control over everything. When you have the second movie coming up, you're following up one that like everyone loved. There is a lot of pressure on you, right? So
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a dangerous thing with like second movies is like first movies, like like Get Out and stuff, I don't know how long he worked on that, but I'm sure like he had to work to get it made, work to get it like the script finished, like getting all this stuff, and then once Get Out came out, they're probably like, what's next? And he was like, oh, I had like this idea, and then they just made that movie, and it felt a little like half baked in some parts to me. Like the script they could have used another year. I think it came out the 2 years after, a year after, and with Midsummer it's coming out the year after Hereditary. So either he had a tight script and he was like, I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
Or they were like, what's next? I think A24 would be like, would give him time if he wanted it. I was gonna say, you look at like Tarantino with like Reservoir Dogs to Pulp Fiction. I think there's like 4 years in between them. Yeah. And it's like just like like getting, like bigger and more, and now he is where he is.
Something that I do think, I guess the reason I brought up the Kendrick thing, because I didn't fully flesh it out enough, is he made something so different that you couldn't properly compare it. And that's what I see Midsummer and Hereditary as. Hereditary, like everything about it, from the marketing to the actual tone of the trailers and everything, it's like dark, blacks and blues, spooky child, horror movie. Midsummer, it's like very bright, whites and yellows, cult. And that's funny because Hereditary is also about a cult, but it's like not known.
True.
You know it going into Midsummer. And so like already you see like this is such a different movie that I have faith that it'll be good because he's clearly aware of the comparisons that are going to be coming in. And so he was like, let's divert it by making something entirely different so that even if you compare it, you don't really have much ground to stand on.
Yeah. I think he's in a good place too of like, Get Out was like huge. Like it won Academy Awards and like everyone kind of saw it.
Yeah.
Hereditary was always talked about, but like it's like it's not as like huge as Get Out was. So I think a lot of people know Jordan Peele, and he was like the first like black person born to screenwriting. Right?
Pardon?
Screenplay? For a screenplay?
To win for screenplay?
Original?
Oh, I didn't know that.
I thought you said to be born.
Nope. To be born. Yeah. No.
Shit. The first Jordan Peele.
Yeah, but
to be born.
And he's Jordan Peele, so like everyone knows him. Whereas Ari Aster, like Midsummer, like we know who he is, but most people will probably be like, oh, cool, like another movie. This is another movie. Yeah. Unless it says from the director of Hereditary.
But even then, like Hereditary didn't have the reach that Get Out did.
Exactly.
So I totally agree with you. I also think that you're right. He is in a better place because he doesn't have as much pressure on him. Hereditary got so much love from like the indie scene and from critics, but not in the overall eyes of everyone as Get Out did, like you're saying.
Yeah, and I think I don't know if Hereditary would be called like a cult classic yet. I think it's just like a horror classic, but it's like new still. So it's still like finding its way and people are coming to it still, and like it's just had time to breathe. Whereas like Get Out was so big. Everyone saw it, everyone talked about it, and then like Us was coming out when Twilight Zone was coming out, and like everyone was like, Jordan Peele's the new master of horror, he's the new master of horror. And so Us like had like the most pressure I think a horror movie could have. Yeah. And then so it's like of course there's like this buzz around it, whereas Hereditary feels like it was more like a slow burn where people were like, oh, I don't want to see that, or people were like, oh shit, like it had like a low cinema, it had like a D- cinema score because people coming out were like, fuck that movie. Yeah. And then slowly people were like, this is like a thing, like this is something new. Yeah. Like so was Get Out.
I feel like with Get Out and Us as well, you have to keep in mind that they were about really current, prominent social issues. Hereditary is just a horror movie,
Yeah, it's universal kind of.
Exactly. And so with Get Out and Us, it helped be so forefront and have so much eyes on it because everyone's like really talking about the things that these movies are talking about. So almost Jordan Peele is putting himself out there to be the voice of what's happening right now, to be one of the people socially commenting on what's happening. Whereas Hereditary is just a great horror movie that isn't really linked, at least blatantly, to the things that are going on socially. So I feel like that's just a whole nother level to it. Because people saw Get Out and they're like, Jordan Peele has a lot to say and an amazing perspective, and he's like the voice of black cinema as well as the voice of horror cinema. So whatever he's gonna make next is gonna blow all our minds and change the social landscape, And so when people saw Us, and
that could be why. That's actually a really good point. That could be why people had that expectation.
Yeah,
totally.
I think there's like an expectation of it to be like revolutionary.
Yeah, maybe that's why.
And at the end of the day, it's just a movie. Yeah. And I think that's like a dangerous, because Get Out was kind of, it was like.
Well, it kind of was.
It was part of like the resurgence of like mainstream horror a little bit.
Yeah.
And then.
It's funny because it was revolutionary, but not for the way that people like thought in a way. People were like, it's revolutionary in a social way, but in to be honest, it was more revolutionary just as a movie in like a movie making way, because the things that it had to say weren't new ideas. They were just the first time those ideas had been put into a movie like that. So people were expecting that us would like blow their minds and change and like bring people together on a social issue. But Get Out didn't do that. Get Out just brought those issues onto the screen, which is what he did with Us. But people expected something different because I think they had a warped vision of what Get Out did. You know?
That's a good point. We have 30 minutes.
We have 30 minutes?
Only, yeah.
35. That's cool. Let's just go in then. Mid-90s.
Mid-90s. Another, so Hereditary, A24. Another A24 movie.
Yeah.
Mid-90s.
Yeah. Really quick. A24 kills it, man. I haven't seen an A24 movie I don't like.
Yeah, like...
So true.
I'm gonna grab my notes.
What do we got? We got 8th grade. We got
Like
Hereditary.
Hereditary.
We got The Witch.
oh,
The
there's
Witch.
so many good ones.
Mid-90s. Have you guys seen Mid-90s?
No, I haven't seen
no, I haven't
Mid-90s, but I'm ready to talk about it.
Yeah, Moonlight, 8th grade, Hereditary, Lady Bird,
Moonlight.
Yeah.
all in the past couple of years. Like, they're... If somebody has an A24, I consider like a stamp of approval. I'm like, I'm in.
Yeah.
Like, I'm gonna
Yeah.
give them the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
Man, was I excited when I saw Mid-90s.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, straight up. It's sort of just like immediately the recipe for a good film. A24, Jonah Hill. The soundtrack in the trailer was amazing. Like, you just knew, like, going into it, this is something different and special. Something that blew me away the first time I watched it. When you watch a trailer, you don't really fully get a clue of how the movie's going to be presented, because you assume that the trailer is presented in a certain stylized way. For example, Suicide Squad. So I didn't really understand how the movie was going to look or feel, because it's obviously very different. What blew me away was the fact that it really, really felt like a home movie, and he obviously filmed it on equipment like from the 90s. So when you're watching it, not only does it feel like it's in the 90s in terms of like the set and the acting, but like it could have been filmed in the 90s.
Dude.
I wouldn't have doubted it.
Yeah.
Fun fact that like when they were editing it, I can't remember who it was, someone who was like in that process was like, oh, that's super cool that you guys found this like old movie from the 90s and are like re-releasing
Yeah, it was a projectionist at a festival.
Yeah, and Jonah Hill said like that was like the best compliment and like the best thing that they could have heard, because like that's what he wanted. And so he was really passionate about shooting on 4:3 like
4:3
16
ratio.
Yeah.
Yeah, 16 millimeter.
Yeah, shot on 16.
Yeah, because basically the
millimeter.
only movie that's made a lot of money is like shot on that is Grand Budapest Hotel. And so like he had to go like pitch it to A24 because they didn't want him to shoot it in that aspect. But he had to like pitch it to A24. He had this whole slideshow of like all Grand Budapest Hotel being like, hey, this is it. And then they let him. So that's why I said
that's
that
the
it's
relation.
involved. But yeah,
That's so
yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Grand Budapest Hotel, I think, doesn't even do it for the whole movie. It's only parts of it. It
That's what
switches
I- okay,
aspect
Okay,
ratio.
is
That's
that why
why
you
I
were
was like,
confused?
I don't
Okay, I thought it
remember
was
it
the whole
being
movie.
4:3.
No,
It's
it's
just
like-
the
Oh,
beginning.
okay.
You know how it's got different timelines, right?
Because
So
it broadens out at a point with the
Okay.
hotel, right?
well, there's 3 timelines. You have like the girl in the graveyard telling the story kind of
Yes.
deal. Then you
Yeah.
have like the timeline of, I think, like the current timeline with Zero and Mr. Gustav. And then there's one other timeline, and all 3 are told
with Jude Law, right?
with Jude Law. All 3 are told with different aspect ratios, which helps to separate them. And Wes Anderson was super nervous that was going to mess with the ability for people to understand it. But he was like, I don't care. He did it. And it actually really helps because it switches between them very suddenly. There's never like a point where it's like, slow dissolve 10 years later. It just like
Yeah.
happens,
Yeah.
right? And part of the reason you're able to clue into it is because the aspect ratio changes, like subconscious.
It's really cool that I don't know why that reminds a little of Sub Off, but do you know that it's Giorgio by Moroder or whatever, by Daft Punk? It's like this song they record this guy talking about the eras of techno music, and as he talks about each era, they're using microphones from that era.
That's
To record
so
it?
cool.
I love stuff like that.
It's just so cool.
Just like the authenticity
Yeah.
that's captured, and then what Jonah Hill captured. Like another like cool thing is he gave all the kids fucking iPods, with like playlists that their characters would listen to, and then also the movie's soundtrack, which is just like, I don't know, that's so authentic. Like,
Yeah. I think that's part of the reason this movie works so well is because the attention to detail is so intense, and
Yeah.
you can tell that it's not just in the presentation, but in the creation through every level. So all of these actors were given so much to use and to work with, and because a lot of them are unknown actors or actors who may be known for things outside of acting, you just get this sense that they're real people who are actually experiencing these things because of how deeply Jonah Hill gave them things to feel like the character.
And I feel like it's because Jonah had such like a deep love about this movie that he like wanted so badly to it like to tell this story, and so he was like so authentic with the language used in the film and like how everyone dressed. It's just like everything is so authentic because he cared so much about it. There's even like a clip of him showing like I think Sonny that he like his scar on his arm from a car accident that he was in, and he was like talking to them being like, yeah, like that's what this was like, and like it was really life changing. So I think he just like really wanted them to understand, and they totally did because they told the story to like I think the best of their abilities, and it was so beautiful and like so vulnerable and so sad and like
So true.
yeah.
You probably have some notes on the making of the film, like just like pieces of information about characters and stuff like that.
Kind of.
Did you have something to say?
No, really.
I just like to give the floor to you to be like, oh, this person directed it, and this person.
Yeah, if we
is the
want
actor.
to like roll in. Yeah, so it's Jonah Hill's directorial debut. He wrote it himself over like a couple years or like a long time. How 5 years? Or something?
Like 5. Yeah,
And
a long time.
It's like his super bad.
Like 4
yeah,
years.
kind
Yeah.
of. And he said too that he like wrote it while listening to the music, and the music was like an integral part of the script, and that they were lucky to get all the songs that he wanted to get.
Yeah.
Which is just cool. The music was done by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, and they work with Fincher a lot. They do like they won the Academy Award for The Social Network, and they also recently produced Old Town Road. Fun fact.
Old Town Road.
Well, think about that. That's crazy. Social Network's score won awards. This score like is so deeply and
So good.
like impactful when you're watching the film. And Old Town Road is the hit right now. That's crazy. That's
interesting,
such
yeah.
a weird mix of.
That is cool.
Yeah.
If you're listening right now, literally download like the playlist for the Mid90s like
Yeah, it's
soundtrack
great.
and score. It's so good. It's so good.
I find that when a director approaches a movie with music in mind during the writing process and listens to it while they're writing, the movie always is just better. I don't know what that's yeah.
Yeah, it's like I know Christopher Nolan. They'll write the scores will be written while he's. I think it's Nolan. They'll write the score while they're making the film. So like he'll have music to like help him, which makes sense because then you feel it through. You know, like how you shoot the scene is based on how the song is, and how the song is based on how the scene is written, and it's intertwined. And I think whenever you watch a Nolan film, and this film, like the soundtrack, it kind of scores it, and every song feels like perfectly placed. Like it's just seamlessly like infused into
There's just so much craft in the film.
the
There's just like it
environment and
seems
the
like he was
atmosphere.
like painting on a canvas, and it's like so specific, and he just like crafted everything he wanted. And I just think that's so cool.
Something that really stood out to me in the film just overall was that the final scene where they show the little home movie that fourth grade isn't making the whole time, to me, like it felt like they took the movie and just like squished it together, because that is like what the movie feels like. Like you're saying, the soundtrack is so integral. It's a lot of just scenes of people like really casually interacting.
And,
it's
like,
very living. And that's what fourth grade's movie is like at the end, right? And so it almost feels like it's interesting how it's like a recap of the whole movie
I
with a
didn't think of it
song.
that way. That's a really good point.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's sort of like because it even goes to all these scenes we've already seen and shows them from different angles. Like you see the house party, you see all these other things, and you're like, oh, so that's what the movie felt like, but like tighter. It almost feels like a
just so right.
skateboard film that was just filmed on a little camera with a bunch of friends.
That's what Jonah Hill, I think, said his goal was, or inspiration was, like a kind of like a skate film with like very limited skating and more behind the scenes.
Cool.
Kind of.
Yeah,
and
I
that's
like
what
that.
it feels like. It's like, because I think that's why 4x3 works, and it feels like you're watching like a home movie that someone recorded, and like an old thing that, like an old skate video or something.
Yeah.
And it just feels so like of the time, but then you're also like into these, it's a great way into the story, and I think it supports the story super well.
Yeah. So something that I saw on your notes that stood out to me that I think I would like to talk about, because I'm curious as to your thoughts on it, was there's like really clearly shown but never addressed themes of self-harm.
Oh yeah,
And
I want to talk about that.
yeah, it's interesting because I think that's something that most people at that age at least know about, are curious about, attempt. Not everyone does it long term, but it's interesting to have that like displayed in a film, because I don't think I've seen many movies that just had it as like a point and it wasn't the main point. You know what I mean? The character's really stressed out. He's in like a tough family situation, and so when he gets really stressed out, like the scene with the hairbrush.
Yeah, with the hairbrush, and he's like Yeah.
that was so like I remember.
It's like grating it on his leg.
Yeah, there's so many scenes in this movie where
Yeah.
things happen like that, or like the fights between him and his brother that just feels so raw and unexpected.
Even
and
the movie starts out with Lucas Hedges just beating on him. And I'll be honest, like those scenes I find honestly like deeply disturbing. Something about it. The film's not even trying to make it disturbing. You're just watching it happen. And
just so-
especially when he's hurting himself, just to watch like the sweet little boy like hurt himself. I just it was really I don't think I watched it the second watch. Like I had to look away.
Man.
Yeah, I really something about it really affected me. In a good way though.
It's just so like intimate.
Yeah.
Like in a way of like it doesn't make it anything it's not, and it doesn't glorify it, which makes it a little more hard to watch. I think because like Stevie, he's young. Like I think he's like 13.
I think he's supposed
12?
to be like
12, 12, but like looks
He was
young.
even younger, and I think he was 10.
Yeah, like
His
it.
character's 10.
No, I think he is 10.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
But
Okay.
I think.
But his
Like I think
character's
that's
13?
how old he was. I think his character's supposed to be 12.
the 12, any around there.
yeah.
But like to see some, I think like what is like hard to watch is that like we don't want to believe that people that young have these like really like real problems and real shit going on. Like, but it doesn't take a noble approach of being like he's just a little kid. He's like, no, he's like pretty fucked up.
Yeah.
Well,
Because
again,
like everyone is,
Yeah.
and there's no, it doesn't explain it. It doesn't, no one addresses it. It's just only we get to see it. And it just, to me, it immediately made him feel like a character and not an idea of a kid going through this.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, he's a person. Like, you know, if that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense. And I was saying this last night to my friend. So much of this movie is about, like, what I felt is Stevie has these expectations of what these guys are going to be like before he sees them. The mom has these expectations. I mean, before he hangs out with them. The mom has these expectations of what these guys are going to be like just based off how they look. There's all these people have these expectations of what the famous skateboarders are going to be like, and they treat them a certain way. The movie, in a lot of ways, is about like these judgments you make about people and these expectations you have, preconceived notions, and then what it actually is like. Stevie is like worshiping these people, and then he's like, they're never going to want to be my friend. They're never going to be like this. And then he spends time with them, and you get to know them in this like deeper way. And even the way it's presented, the first conversation you hear from these guys, and the first time you see them, they're like antagonizing a shop owner, and then they're talking about like the most fucked up stuff in the first scene. And my first thought was like, I didn't even think that they were going to be main characters because of just the way that they were talking and stuff. I was like, oh, they're probably just like an example of skateboarders. And then as you get to know them, you start to understand them in a deeper way. And that happens with every single character too. It's not just Stevie, which is so cool.
I think it's interesting you bring that up because I think that everything you're saying goes off the idea of skateboarding and I think what it means for some people. This idea of like authenticity and kind of like it goes beyond like the idea of race. I think like Jonah Hill had a good quote about it. What did he say? He said, skateboarding does always bring different races together, any subculture or common interest, but especially skateboarding really isn't about race, it's about skateboarding, which is why I think these kids end up getting into these wonderful conversations and hard conversations and uncomfortable conversations because they're together, united by this thing when socioeconomically and neighborhood-wise they would be separate. So I just think it's interesting, like there's so many, you can judge people like based on where they're from and blah, 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 but like I feel like with them, for them, skateboarding pushes those boundaries away anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The name of the character who's like the leader. What's his name again? Ray. He even kind of brings that up when he's telling Stevie. He's like, yeah, this guy, his mom beats him, and like I go through this, and we all go through this, but at the end of the day, like we're all friends and we're all here skateboarding.
Or when they talk to this homeless guy.
Yeah. That scene is so beautiful when they're talking to the homeless guy and they're interviewing him. Like I feel like that scene to me felt like sort of a mission statement about the movie. If you're just listening to what they're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like, sorry.
No.
Going to like expectations, and I think that's a very interesting thing about it is, like when you're introduced to the group, it feels like, like they're like hoodlums.
Yeah.
And then even like early on, our first introduction to the group, like our first, through Stevie is like Ruben, and he's even telling him like, don't say thanks, man, like it's gay.
Yeah.
Like not like that's what he says. I don't. But he's like, saying shit like that, and you're like, oh, like that's But then later when he talks to Ray's like, no, say thank you, like
it's common courtesy.
Yeah, like when you get to like the top of the pyramid, there's like a really sweet, hardworking guy.
Yeah.
And these people are all looking up to this hardworking guy.
Yeah.
And he's like, you know, the one who seems like he's gonna go pro, and he's like loves it, and he's working hard. He is like so straight laced, and just like this perception from like Ruben's trying to like show off a little bit and be like, oh, like we're cool because he just does like it's interesting. They're different like reasons for being there.
Yeah. Well, Ruben's like at the bottom of the heap when Stevie shows up, and so I think he makes himself feel better by flexing on Stevie a lot.
Yeah.
You know, he's like he's at the bottom and he feels bad about it. So he's like, oh, there's a new kid who's younger and lamer than me. So he's like calling him all these rude things, and he's like,
I love the dialogue there. Like, look at me, I smoke.
Yeah.
I'm better than you or something. It's
so funny. It's so
Oh.
funny. Do you guys ever notice when you watch a movie like this where it's very raw and like the characters are purposely super realistic, that it's almost jarring? When I first watched it, I was like, oh, these actors are sort of like off. But then I was like, oh, it's just because it's more realistic than most performances are.
Yeah.
You know?
I think it's like a wonderful thing if there's a great mix of new actors, like Academy Award nominees, older, you know, there's like this it's like a mix, and then since there's a mix, no one's better, no one's worse. They're all just like they're all there doing their job, and it takes away like the something about it.
Yeah.
'Cause I think like Lucas Hedges like he like just fits perfectly in with all of them.
Yeah.
But they fit in with him, and they match each other, and there's no better than or like skateboarding, right? Like you can be new to like Stevie's new to skateboarding, but Ray doesn't treat him differently than he treats fuck shit or any of the other guys.
Yeah.
You know, he doesn't like when you get to Ray,
Shit.
like Ruben acts like he's like he said, like he flexes on him. He acts like there's a hierarchy here.
Yeah.
Like, oh, like some guys get nicknames, some guys don't. Like there's rules here. But when you get to Ray, it's like, no, like Stevie, like he's there for Stevie.
Yeah.
He's there for anyone. And because I think that's kind of what like it's about. It's like Ray, because there's no, at the end of the day, they're all there to fucking skateboard.
Yeah. There's a really cool shot, parallel shots that really spoke to me. And the first time that you see them all skateboarding as a group, they're going down that road, like weaving, and they're all together. And then there's like Ray's in the front, fuck shit's there. And then fourth grade, Ruben, Stevie, and Stevie's struggling to keep up. And then towards the end, there's that shot where Stevie and Ray are skateboarding together, and they're perfectly in line. And it's something about that, like what it said to me was that like when they're all together, and when you have that perception as a viewer that there's a hierarchy, it's apparent. But when you remove that and you just look at the interpersonal relationships and the connections, there never was a hierarchy, and now they're just best friends.
And that's kind of exactly what Ray says to Stevie when they're on the roof, and
Totally.
Stevie's upset, and he basically says like, if you were to look in someone else's, like, what does he say? He's like, fourth grade is like the poorest kid I know.
Yeah.
But like if you just
It's like he's like, you may think they're living a better life than you, but you look in their closet, you wouldn't want to wear their clothes.
Yeah, exactly. So like and then with the idea of that, there is no hierarchy, so it's very fascinating.
And then even with like the pros, like they still come to the skate park and hang out.
Yeah.
Like there's no difference, and there's no. It's a really just cool.
That's why it seems
look
like
into the
skating
culture
is
of,
really cool. Like
Well, yeah,
with
it's
that
just,
acceptance.
well, it's all about just being there and doing it and having fun. Like I think fuck shit says like it's crazy that just stepping on a piece of wood can elevate your soul. And when you really have the passion for it, you feel that and you understand that all those other things aren't important. There's so many characters in the movie who are like, yeah, I don't really care about going pro. I'm just here to do this. Even the other guys like fourth grade who sees they're skateboarding, but it's not like what he's trying to do with his career. He's just there to skateboard and have fun, you know?
It seems like such a special thing, and also it is different. Like I remember Jonah also saying in an interview, like it is different now. Like skateboarding is more accepted socially, and like it's gonna be in the Olympics, like in 2020.
Yeah,
literally.
Yeah.
So it's very different. And so again, 90s was a dope choice. Another random thing that I heard him say was that the 90s was a cool choice because like none of the kids have phones, so it just like allows for like there just was more authentic conversations possibly going on at the time. I don't know because I didn't live it, but for example, you'll be talking to someone and then maybe you'll just like feel uncomfortable and go on your phone, and you could have like missed the opportunity of like having this really cool connection.
True.
So it's just like another cool thing that like these kids are just like hanging out and they don't have their phones to just be like, meh.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. I feel like a skateboarding movie like this, or a movie with this message through the lens of skateboarding, needed to take place in the 90s.
Definitely.
It's just like was so perfect. Whatever Jonah Hill was trying to say, he chose the perfect vehicle for it and the perfect setting for it, which is why it connects so well.
Yeah, I think that there's like there can be a conception. I think of like nostalgia porn or things that are like, you know, like nostalgia for the sake of like being nostalgic. I think this movie, it fits the narrative. Like it just works with everything, and it feels seamless. And yeah,
the people who think it's nostalgia porn are people who are missing the message.
Yeah.
Because if
Yeah,
you
you have to
understand the
miss it.
message,
Yeah.
you know that that's an important part of like that setting isn't the plot, isn't the meaning. The setting is just the setting. It helps carry the meaning. If you're looking at it as just the setting and like then you'll miss the meaning.
yeah, it's like if you just watch like the trailer and you're like, oh, fuck that.
Yeah.
And even the name, like Mid90s, like it's just not about that. Like you could take the story and put it anywhere and it would work. Yeah, I love the family elements of it, like Stevie's home life versus his life with the skaters, and it's just very interesting. And his brother, I think, rewatching it, I think Ian is so fascinating. Like his brother,
Flawed. He's just such a flawed character. I mean, everyone is, but
Yeah.
he's so flawed.
When you're
It's
first
really sad.
introduced to him, you kind of get this feeling because of just the way that their dynamic is that he might be like kind of a cool guy and and he might have a lot of friends and Stevie's super lame.
Yeah.
And then you realize that the reason he's such a dick is because he has no friends.
Yeah.
He's not a cool guy and he's just like antagonizing people out of like his own depression.
Insecurity.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And his home life, like kind of dealing with like his mom, like sleeping around. It seems, or not. I don't want to say sleeping around, but you know, like random guys coming over
he
and
does-
growing up with that, and just like.
Yeah.
And also, you realize that they're
Well,
half brothers,
I'm-
which I
or I
didn't-
don't know if they are,
it seems
but,
very
like,
plausible.
When I was watching it again, and there's a conversation where it's his 18th birthday, and his mom says something like, "Oh, like I was breastfeeding you on my 18th birthday." So she had him when she was young, and then he says like, "Mom used to be cool before you." Like guys, like there's sex sounds and stuff. So like his memories of being a kid were like different guys coming in and out, and like maybe that. I mean, it kind of. I don't know who those guys. You know, it doesn't tell you.
Definitely Harmony Korine.
Yeah, he cameos, but
He cameos?
yeah, he plays like
and it's
like the mom's like sleeping with him.
someone who walks out, and it's interesting because he wrote Kids, which took place in the 90s. Have you seen that?
I haven't
and
seen
it's
it, but I know-
quite
I know
like
about
an
it.
homage, almost like Jonah had said it was inspired by Kids. So
Mm-hmm.
I guess maybe they're friends, but it's cool that he was in it.
Interesting.
I want to see Kids.
Something that I wanted to touch on because this was one of my only things during the movie where I was like, that's a pretty big plot hole. And what it was after they just got in this horrific car accident that potentially could have killed a bunch of them, fuck shit was just like totally not in trouble. He was just at the hospital chilling with them. And then
I didn't even realize
right?
that. Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, that's kind of weird, but I didn't really like, I wasn't making a big deal about it. My friend Evan Sampson, this is his favorite movie. And he actually owns a magazine that Jonah Hill released. And he says there's only 25 copies of it in the world. And it's just like a huge poster-sized magazine about the movie. And he says in that magazine, the reason, it addresses it. And it says the reason that fuck shit wasn't in trouble was because he crashed the car and he got out and ran away. And so they couldn't like place him to the crime, and so he didn't get in trouble, which is super interesting because it shows that he didn't fully redeem himself, because you get this sense that that was such a horrible thing, and you'd expect that he would get in trouble and then grow and learn from it, because that only happens because he lets his flaws take over. But the fact that he runs away and doesn't get in trouble makes me feel like, okay, he's still just as flawed.
Yeah.
You know?
Which
is
I
super-
really like.
It's interesting.
Which is great. Like,
Yeah.
you don't need a hero and you don't need the character to redeem himself. There's no need to be noble anyways with the storytelling. So I love stuff like that personally.
Yeah. Super interesting. Yeah.
Wow.
This is a fun little fact for
Fun.
you.
I thought you were gonna be like, because they all died, and that scene is the afterlife,
Oh,
and
no.
the kids are dead.
Classic.
That is cool.
That's really cool.
I like that. There's not a lot of change with anyone other than just like they just like accept each other, and I think that's like. Because I think knowing the characters, I think they would just they'd be like, yeah, like I know that you're, like if we were in an accident with our friends and someone ran, I'd be like, yeah, like straight up, I'd rather you be here and like I'll be pissed off at you, but like I'm glad you're not in jail.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah, it's
You
true.
know, like
Yeah, I feel like this is like a weird parallel, but another really popular piece of 90s media is Seinfeld. And Seinfeld is, the whole thing is like the characters are experiencing these things, but they don't always really learn about anything. Like every episode, they're the same people. You know, they could go through an episode where at the end of the episode, Jerry learns, oh, I shouldn't have been a dick. And the next episode, he's just as much of a dick. Like maybe there's a little bit of that inspiration where in this movie, it's like,
what?
Did you compare them? Didn't you bring up Seinfeld when we were talking about this?
don't
I was
think
like,
so.
that's so trippy. Okay, never mind. I just hallucinated for a second.
Super cool.
That's
Must be
interesting.
tripping.
I gotta see Seinfeld.
It's so good. Like that's the reason Seinfeld works so much is because you always knew what you were getting, and then there were also no boundaries to what you like. You knew that these characters were going to be assholes, but there was no boundaries to it because since they never learned anything, there was no reason to have like a preconceived notion of what could happen. You know what I mean? All you knew was that they were going to be dicks. The reason I bring it up is because maybe there's a little bit of that almost nihilistic perspective in mid-90s where it's like because in the big picture the characters they like go through things together but they don't and they change but they don't have these like big moral conversations where they're like I'm gonna change, man, I'm gonna be a better person, I'm gonna stop drinking. It's like that nihilism is just to help highlight that all that is really important to these characters is what they're doing in the moment. You know, interesting.
And I think it's also something of like they don't change, but they just like there's never like the conversation with Ray and Stevie. He's never like he doesn't give him advice or anything. He's just like, let's go skate.
Yeah.
Like let's just like, you know,
Yeah.
like that's how. And I think it's very like.
Well, he kind of does.
Well, he does, but like the
Yeah.
advice is kind of like.
Let's go skate.
Let's be
no,
there
you're
for
right.
each other.
You're right.
Like,
You're
Yeah.
right.
The,
Like-
the advice isn't like you should do this. It's like
No, true.
it's like you should look at it like this.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
because I think it's a thing too. It's like
True.
sometimes there's nothing anyone can say, but you can be there for each other.
Just like how he says, like, yeah, when his brother passed away, fuck shit, just like came to his house and dragged him out and made him skate with him.
Yeah.
That conversation's so important for how much you like fuck shit as a person.
True.
Because he does some fucked shit.
He does. He totally does.
And,
Yeah.
and so when you see that conversation happen and you're like, oh, like, yeah, he's flawed, but he's also like a really amazing friend, you know? It's interesting. Every character in this movie is so realistic because no one's painted with a golden brush, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. One last little kind of interesting thing I want to talk about. I feel like this will be very quick because I feel like we'll unanimously agree. But like, how do you guys feel about the language used in the film? Because they use the F word, not fuck, but the other F word a lot.
Yeah.
They say like
The N-word a lot.
The N-word, say things are gay.
Yeah.
In like a negative connotation. And it's people, there's been complaints about it and controversy. I feel like it's such a non-issue because that's
Yeah, I feel like all
how
of us
kids would talk.
probably
That's how
feel
people
that way.
talked, and like it's like
It's just true to the time, and that's all he wanted.
yeah,
you
that's
know?
just
True to
truthful.
the time, yeah.
Yeah, you can't. For example, like there's so many movies. Like say, take Django. You go back to like
Yeah.
slave times. You can't be like, hey, you can't say this because
Yeah.
it's like that's what they were saying.
Like, it would be-
To be realistic, you have
Exactly.
to.
And
People
then
are just
Tarantino gets
exactly
the backlash
Yeah.
for using the N-word. Just
Yeah.
But I think Tarantino even said it would be like more offensive not to use that word in that movie because
Yeah.
like that's what the world. If I like
So
to
the
be
world-
like, oh no, everyone was fine.
Yeah.
No one was racist back then. It's like, well, of course
movie
they were.
about
or to
slaves.
have the
And-
racism without them saying that
Yeah.
awful word.
And even like the 90s. I mean, it's such a new thing to not like to be super like progressive and
Yeah.
stuff, which
And the F
is
word,
good.
too,
But
like-
like if you're doing a period piece, which it is, you should be true to the period and true to the characters who would be there.
I think
Yeah.
people are a little more raw about it because a lot of the people that are watching it, were born in the 90s and they might feel regretful about using that language, or it's like because it's so recent, they like associate that to their own lives more than somebody who watches a movie in the 1800s would. So they
True.
feel like even though it's in the past, it's still within their lifetime. So they still feel like, oh, we shouldn't be using this language because I relate to it. Like I was there, and they don't want to use that language. And maybe at that time they didn't want to use that language either. Maybe they were super progressive at that time, but it doesn't mean that you need to like make everything all like sparkly and clean because it's a movie about like the dirty, grungy realism of life at that time. So you need to be realistic and bring the bad, dirty stuff as well as the beautiful side, you know?
I think Jonah Hill was kind of having this concern, and they shot a scene where they kind of talk about like, should we be using this word? And one of the producers, he showed it, and then I think one of the producers said like, would you have had that conversation? And he was like, no. And he's like, then I think it's like it's more kind of offensive to put it in. It's more like it's just makes it more of an issue to put it in.
I think the perfect conversation that they have to address these sort of topics without really addressing it like that was when they were talking about like, do black people use sunscreen?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that conversation is awesome because it's like it shows that fourth grade he's being kind of ignorant, but from a place of love. Like he's curiosity. Like he's not being like racist. He's just kind of unsure. And I think that that's what a lot of people who use these words are coming from. People who use the R word, people who use the F word, not fuck, but the other one. They're not saying it because they're like they're horrible or bigoted. They're often saying it just because that's just what they say. It just comes out. I know people to this day still say the R word because they're just used to saying it. You know? I thought that was a really interesting conversation. And the fact that when they turn it on to Stevie and you're just like, oh, this is make or break. He could completely ruin his friendships with her. And he just says something like almost completely unrelated, just like he just makes a meme.
What are black people?
Yeah.
I think he's serious though.
I couldn't tell if he was.
I think he's serious.
Oh, really?
I honestly think
playing
he's
the game.
No, I think he's serious. I think he's so young that he doesn't understand that concept. Don't you think?
Potentially.
Oh.
Like I know
It's
a lot of young kids, like they don't learn to differentiate races until somebody's like, oh, that person's different.
Exactly. That's why I thought that like he's that young and naive that he doesn't even know those things in the world exist, like racism or differentiating people. He just sees people as people, which is something just like such a childlike, pure like thing. So it kind of broke my heart. I thought it was on purpose.
I thought he was just like didn't know what to say, and he was just trying to make a
so
joke.
Scared and
then just like said something to try and be like controversial, but didn't know how, and so he just said it. But he says it like
I don't think that's how a 10-year-old thinks, though. I don't know.
It's hard to tell.
I don't know.
That like I think maybe part of the reason that scene works so well is because you're like, why did he say
never
that?
know.
Yeah.
You'll never know why he said that,
Wow.
but they all loved it, and they're like,
Yeah.
oh, you're so funny. And so it's like, well, it worked out.
Sunburn.
That's probably how he felt. He was
Yeah.
like, why did they even like what I just said?
Yeah.
Like he was like, oh, thank God I said that on him.
Yeah. Oh,
Alright.
he so breaks my heart.
Anyway, I think any like
Yeah.
last minute thoughts. I think something a lesson I personally learned was when we went to go see this movie in the theater. There was tons of skaters there. It was like opening night, I think. And at first, before I was like, oh, I hope there's not like a bunch of talking and stuff in the theater. And I totally fucking judged all these people there.
Yeah.
And then the minute the movie started, one guy like whispered something kind of quietly to his friend, and his friend went, yo man, you can't talk in the movie theater. And then it was silent, and one of the best experiences I've had in a theater. And I was like, oh my God, okay, it was like a personal revelation of like, oh, okay, yeah, like, wow, I've fallen into this like judgment, even though like that would have been me in high school. Like they would have looked at me that way.
You lived the movie experience during the movie.
Yeah, so that's why
Exactly,
that's
'cause
my
that's kinda
like
what the movie's
that's what
saying,
it has
too,
to
which
me.
is really
It holds
cool.
a special place in my heart. So do you guys have anything that like you hold and take away from this movie?
Well, like firstly, I know this is a little face value, but like I'm gonna pick up my skateboard again because I I just saw the movie and I was like, dang, like I find it really inspiring that all these people are putting so much time and effort into something just to fulfill themselves, with not to impress anyone, just for fun. And I make a lot of art, but I make art to share, you know, not art to like do by myself. Yeah, so I feel like that inspired me to put more emphasis on just doing little things like that to fulfill myself. Another thing I took away from it was kind of in a similar vein, just like it was like a reinvigoration for me just to remember that everybody has their own unique story, and whatever that story is, it's not my place to make a judgment on whether or not they're a good or a bad person just because they're from an entirely different place. And it's just so important to get to know people, to have these conversations, to ask them who they are before I really decide like, is this someone I want to align with, you know?
I agree. I feel like, I took that feeling away of just like the freaking cliche of it all, don't judge a book by its cover, but like honestly, like that is totally a thing. We all do it. It's only human, but just to kind of train the brain and not do that as much, because like if you just stop and like talk to someone, like you never know where they came from. So I really like that takeaway.
Cool. Let's flip this coin.
Let's flip a coin
Flip
for
a
what we're
coin.
gonna do next week. All right. So it's between Quinn and I, because Autumn picked Mid90s. So I'll flip and you call it.
Let's do it. I'll
right.
be heads.
Heads. It's heads.
Ooh, we're doing Pineapple Express.
Yee.
Wow, Yoshi!
Yeah. Thank you guys so much for listening. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook under my name, Austin McWhorter. That's where you can find me. Where can you find you guys?
Quinn?
At my house on Instagram, Quinn Grayson. Bye.
You can find me, Autumn, on Instagram as autumn._.woods, or on Twitter as It's Autumn Woods, or on Facebook as Autumn Woods. You can find me in the woods. You never know where you're going to find me.
Awesome. And you can find us here every Sunday for more movie fun times.
Yeah.
Thank
Fun
you
times.
so much for listening. See you guys next week. Peace, fam.
Minimize screen time. Minimize screen time. Minimize screen time. Minimize screen time. Minimize.